correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPG, the podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, what's up? Welcome back to Me and Steve, and we've got another installment of our dark gaming, horror, all that fun stuff series here going. Maybe the last episode in the series, but who kind of knows, because, well, we just wing it most of the time anyway. But I'm here tonight with Steve.
Hey, Steve.
And we have another guest this week. But before we get into all that, let's do a little quick promo for another show on the D20 Network here, Steve.
Yeah, I think we're talking about Tabletop Tales. Why don't you give us the 30-second pitch on them?
Tabletop Tales is cool. They're an actual play podcast here on the D20 Network. They currently have, I believe, 3 campaigns going. The main one is one they call What Comes After, which is a post-apocalyptic Genesis game set in, well, actually like 90s New England. But it was a really, really fun series, and I think they've actually played the last session of it, although I don't know if it's aired yet. But that was a really, really cool setting, and we actually talked to their GM, Tyler, about it a number of episodes back. They've also got a Star Wars Edge of the Empire game going, which I believe they also stream, and there is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game that they also do a stream of. So be sure and check them out. They're really cool people and good fun shows.
Yeah, good people over at Tabletop Tales. I love that podcast. But we have a very important guest on this week.
That we do.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Oh, I get to do that too. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you've been paying attention in the last couple of weeks, there's been one game that's got brought up a couple of times, and that is a game that's, well, brand new out. It's not even out in print yet. That's still kind of working its way to wherever from the printers, and that would be Haunted West from Darker Hue Studios and Chris Spivey. And this week, we're very happy to be joined by Chris Spivey himself. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks. I appreciate you, Steve, having me on the show.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on the show and coming on to talk to us.
yeah, very much. So, obviously that's your newest thing out. You also got a lot of attention. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, but for, oh my gosh, my brain's failing me.
Harlem Unbound.
Yes, Harlem Unbound. And when we've talked some Call of Cthulhu a lot recently, so that was a supplement for that, and that's in 2 editions now. So I don't know, Chris, where would you like to start? Because obviously the new thing is cool, and I know there's some really unique elements to it, but the other thing is, from what I understand, a work of mastery in many ways. So
Wow, that puts me in a really awkward place if I would have try to talk myself up, but I can't go much higher than that. But then I don't want to appear too humble by saying, no, it was nothing. I did it in my spare time in one day with 4 other people, and it was whatever. I guess we can start with Harlem Unbound, since that's probably what I'm most well known for.
Okay.
How would you like to start?
Well, I mean, here's what I know of Harlem Unbound. I know it is a supplement for Call of Cthulhu, primarily in the 1920s, dealing with life in Harlem, especially for minorities. And I have been told that Harlem Unbound is the source to go to read about respectfully representing minorities in role-playing game context.
That is a whole lot to unpack. So I guess I'll start like this then. So the idea for Harlem Unbound came to me a long time ago. My cousin is Zora Hurston, who was a predominant figure in the Harlem Renaissance. And the book itself primarily focuses on the time period of the Harlem Renaissance. But if you read through the book itself, it's actually sort of a love letter to Harlem, because the book goes from prehistoric times all the way up to the end of the Harlem Renaissance. The core of the book, we'll say about 85% of it is focused on Harlem, some of the different mythos elements, and some scenarios. But I wanted to make sure that we sort of had a wide gambit to represent history of Harlem, how it's impacted things, the people that lived in Harlem before any of us immigrants came to the country, and make sure all that was properly represented. And so the tagline for the book itself, though, is the Harlem Renaissance through a mythos lens. And you deal with the mythos horrors and the mundane horrors that you have to face, because humans are just as potentially evil, if not more so, than the mythos for marginalized folks that have to interact and encounter with them. It put a spin for a lot of people who are used to potentially, if you're in a Cthulhu scenario, stuff isn't going your way. You know, if you go into that house, that Shoggoth will like crush you and everyone you ever know, and you'll kind of call the police, and the police will show up eventually to distract it, to let you do something. But as one of our black investigators or another marginalized investigator, calling the police could be more deadly than interacting and trying to beat the Shoggoth by yourself.
Yeah, that's, I mean, not something I really personally have a frame of reference for, but yeah, it's a heavy topic, but I think it's one that deserves to be brought out and seen.
So initially with the book, I was pitching it around to different role-playing game companies because I wanted to have a larger company publish the book. But after a few years of getting, we don't think that'll sell, none of our audience would want to read or buy that, I decided to kickstart it myself. And I decided to do that, I want to say, in 2016. And the Kickstarter itself went live in 2017. Yeah. And people had their books in hand in 2017, sorry. And then when the Ennies hit in 2018, we won 3 gold Ennies for best writing, best setting, and best cover. And after the big winning spree, Chaosium came and said, hey, we would love to publish a second edition of the book.
Okay. Now, my understanding from what I've been looking around is that your first edition has stats for both Gumshoe, as in Trail of Cthulhu, and would that have been 6th edition Call of Cthulhu at the time?
No, it was still 7th. But I didn't include any pulp rules in the first edition book.
Okay.
So one of the things for me growing up in Alabama, I never had a lot of money. And so if I bought a role-playing game, it needed to be like a complete game. Otherwise, it is a great book that I could read that I could never do anything with. So for Harlem Unbound, I wanted to give everyone a complete role-playing game. So like, you bought the book, you've got a core book, you've got source material, you can run it, you can do whatever you want with all of your friends. And I wasn't able to do that with Chaosium. They allowed me to be a licensee, and so I could use all of their great material. And so it was a source book for Call of Cthulhu, but it was a completely full core book with the Gumshoe rules. So you could play either or.
Okay, that's how that worked. I did know it has Gumshoe rules, but I wasn't certain if that was tying on to Trail, which I thought was set in the 30s, but I could be wrong there.
No, it's specifically the Gumshoe open license rules material. Trail of Cthulhu itself is a licensed product, so we didn't use anything from that.
Okay. Those licensing stuff get complicated.
Always fun. It's a nice little elegant dance.
Yeah. Well, and then what? I guess now Chaosium has released an OGL on the BRP system, but that didn't help you then.
No, not in 2016.
So that's, like you said, that's probably what you're best known for. And, I don't know how much else you want to say on it other than, like
I could give like a 6-hour lecture on it if you want to, but I kind of want it to be entertaining for you all and just not me saying. So on March 13th, 1923, this occurred.
Well, that's, what I think that's one of, for me, and while I'm not a big fan of 20s Call of Cthulhu play, I think that's one of the draws of that system in general, is that you can do so many historical tie-ins with it. And where you see, some of the people who are really into that system are also massive students of history in various ways. We talked with Seth Skorkowski a couple of weeks ago, and he flat out said he's learned more 1920s history doing research for running Call of Cthulhu games than he ever learned everywhere else combined.
A lot of that's true. Although for me, it was sort of the opposite. I was always into history, somewhat because of my family and somewhat because growing up, I read a lot of books. And so I stumbled on history, and history was almost more engaging, entertaining if you could read the real history than most of the fantasy or sci-fi books. And so when I was doing all that, then I stumbled over Call of Cthulhu that was a role-playing game set in history. And I was like, aha, I have found it. But then I learned about Lovecraft. So
Yeah. Now that is something we haven't really discussed at all this month, and that is, the, for lack of a better way to say it, the
Wait.
problematic nature of a lot of his writings.
You said you've talked a lot about Cthulhu this month. How could you not have discussed Lovecraft? That seems to be like
Well, there's a
the
lot.
white racist in the room.
Yeah, but in modern parlance, there's a lot more than H.P. Lovecraft doing cosmic horror and playing with those characters. And that's the thing that that's the elephant in the room that we've avoided. And yeah, it's a shame that other authors get sort of put down
To avoid
because
having this conversation.
what was that?
Get to avoid having this conversation.
Oh no, it's fine. It's just a shame that other authors get sort of pushed because they are using mythos material and people go, "Oh, well you're using the thing that was created by the racist." Well, yeah, technically, but I've taken it and put my own spin on it. I've told my story. And that's sort of why I appreciate where Call of Cthulhu the game has gone. I appreciate Harlem Unbound and seeing things that are just the antithesis of what he as a person stood for. And I think that's one of the things that I really loved Harlem Unbound. I'll just tell you straight up. I read it and was like, it's fantastic. As a history nerd and as a fan of the Call of Cthulhu game, it's just phenomenal. But I love your takes on things and how you incorporated the history into it, and like you saying about, it's more dangerous to call the police than it is to deal with the Choggoth outside. And that's, started my college career as a history major. And so that's understood completely that, it's like, wow, this is a dark take on a dark situation, and it's interesting. I really dig Harlem Unbound. I really do.
For me, also, there's kind of the element that, I'm, for lack of a better word, I'm a white gamer in my 40s. And I grew up in a very rural northern area where to this day there still aren't many minorities in my hometown. And it's one of those things where I'm aware of it and I know it's been handled very badly in a lot of things, but I don't know how to speak about it and not sound, what do you want to say, patronizing. And I know that's not what it deserves. And I don't know that I'm doing any better of a job by not talking about it, but I think, I don't know. I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth, for lack of a better way to say it.
By not talking about the thing, you inherently become complacent with it and you give it power. It's understandable to be concerned if you're going to mess up and put your foot in your mouth, as you say. But it's stuff that needs to get done. And it is better to try to face whatever it is head on and do it as well as you can with your influence and outreach that you have to make safer spaces for other people in the gaming industry itself. Because I can tell you on the whole that being a black gamer in a lot of these spaces is, let's just say, dubious. And have people that have the ability to say something, not say something, doesn't help. Sorry, I don't want to turn the podcast into a very much a soapbox, and
No,
but it's important. Even if someone puts their spin on the work, it needs to acknowledge what the origin of that work was, because a lot of the racism itself is inherent in the work, and you can separate the two. But there are enough people trying to spin that someone wasn't what they were, that it clouds and confuses other people, and it loses the truth. The most important thing at the end of the day is always going to be the truth, and people need to know it so they can decide how they want to process it and deal with it and move on.
No, I think that's fair. And that's in some ways was one of the reasons I did want to talk with you, because I knew we could talk about it from an informed perspective, or at least you could much better than I could. And, I don't want to speak for Steve as well, but again, and I appreciate what you're saying about, not saying anything, being complicit in ways. And you're right.
Complicit. Thank you.
So yeah, to a certain point, yeah, we did not bring that up in the Call of Cthulhu episode we did, but yeah, maybe we should have, because yeah, Lovecraft had unacceptable views. Let's put it that way, at least from my knowledge. But I also, to me, I think that stuff like what you did with Harlem Unbound, to a certain point, reclaims the what do you want to say, the fiction, and says, yes, the guy who came up with all this was an asshole, but we can still take some of what he did and make it something that includes everybody properly. Was that like one of your goals in doing Harlem Unbound?
One of my goals was to address that and some of the racism itself in the gaming industry, and to talk about it at large on the world itself. But before we tangent into that, one of the things about not talking about it when you get to interact with industry professionals that are actually part of companies producing and making that work is then it becomes something they don't have to address. They don't have to make like a public statement about it or engage with it or say, this is our views, this is what the company is trying to do to offset this. These are the actual moves that we're making, just not sort of cosmetic little asides so people think that we're working on something. And like that's the power that you two have, and the entire network, being podcasters. You get to interview these people, you can interact with them, you can ask them these questions, and then they can respond and sort of say what they really think or what they think the company is going to do to address them and make that space safe for everyone. I am a very small publisher with a microscopic following and even less influence. So no matter how great the work is I put out, and I love every single person that buys it and talks about it, but there are so many people that'll buy it, talk about it, and then it'll sit on their shelf and they'll never play. So then it doesn't have any sort of actual larger reach or impact. So the larger companies need to be doing that work also.
Okay. No, that's fair. Now, I have a question, and I've been thinking about doing some stuff with the Gumshoe Fall of Delta Green set in the 1960s. How much material, as far as dealing with issues of minorities, underrepresented peoples, can someone take from Harlem Unbound and translate it into another setting? Like I'm sure a lot of it does translate, but having not been able to read it yet myself, I don't know.
Most of the material itself can be taken and applied to different settings, different real world situations, and everything else. But there's also nuance that needs to be addressed for each individual time period, because the world has progressed, sometimes better, sometimes worse, and all of that needs to be factored in. As I have not read The Fall of Delta Green, I can't speak to what work Ken may or may not have done.
Yeah, I haven't. I picked it up, but I haven't got a chance to read it again. I've got more things in my to read stack than I know what to do with.
It's on my shelf, but I've been a little busy.
Yes. Well, yeah. You've been doing all kinds of stuff with, well, you had the second edition of Harlem Unbound to do, and then did you launch basically right into Haunted West from that, or did you have some other stuff in the middle?
One of the big things for me is usually when I'm working, I have sort of like my master file that has all these ideas I have for stuff I want to do. And there may be 3 dozen ideas. And then out of that 3 dozen, a dozen of them have actual spines and skeletons for work. And 4 of those may have a couple pages of notes for me to go for projects I want to do sooner than later. And Haunted West was one of the ones that was in that 4 that I had it sort of in my queue after Home Unbound. But I was going to do the sci-fi thing first, but Haunted West kept coming back and saying, hey, we think you should write on this. And instead of doing Haunted West or anything else, I instead wrote over 120,000 word superhero module for Call of Cthulhu for their Pulp Cthulhu that I turned in, I want to say in 2018 or so, that Chaosium will publish one day. And then after that, I went directly to Haunted West.
Well, I can say from my little corner of trying to write, be it campaign ideas, adventures, whatever, I've got a significant list and can never figure out which one I actually want to work on. So can't identify on the same scale, but I understand the conundrum.
And so I've done a lot of other sort of side projects. Like I became the line editor for the Mask of the Mythos book from Onyx Path. It's sort of their Mythos Scion book. I've worked on Dune, Doctor Who, which I'm super excited about for the 2nd edition, as a longtime Whovian. And maybe like a dozen other projects here and there. So it's been a busy couple of years.
Well, that's a good thing. So, yeah, we got a little heavy there, but I think it was a direction we needed to go in and at least address to a certain point. Do you want to, at this point, talk some more about Haunted West, or do you have more you'd like to talk about with Lovecraft and Harlem Unbound and all that.
It's you guys' show, so it's up to you. I don't know how ready you are for that sort of a heavy topic. I've listened to some other podcasts, and I don't think they've gone into that thing before.
Steve, are you muted?
I am. No, I agree with you as far as addressing and keeping companies on their toes with that, especially pushing companies to make public statements, because it's so disingenuous just to hear those. You can tell that it's disingenuous when you hear those like quiet, oh well, yeah, yeah, sure, he might have been. No, we know that Lovecraft was a racist. That's end of discussion. But I think that's a little heavy, and I think maybe moving into talking about Haunted West might not be a bad thing at this point.
Okay, good with that. So, where do you want to start with Haunted West? I know it's a weird West setting. I've heard one of the unique things about it is you actually have basically 3 levels of your game system as far as complexity. And I've also heard you say that you're one of those people who does believe that you can play anything in any system, but you have included the important caveat that with the proper modifications. So,
Which of those would you like to go to first?
I think the best thing would probably be do kind of your overview on Haunted West first.
So, Haunted West is actually a historically accurate core role-playing book, and by that I mean it's layered. For instance, you can say it's Weird West, but what my vision for the book was, and I had all the team work towards too, is that the first layer of the book itself is a historically accurate depiction of America. We started in prehistoric times. We go all the way up to the end of the what is considered the Old West period. For us, was like the last stagecoach robbery in 1916.
Mhm.
But because before we added in any weird or supernatural elements or aliens, I wanted to provide a actual foundation for a game if people wanted to research and dive into the history, which I don't think any other Western game has done to date. I know that all of them may have like Western bits, but they always have supernatural infused. We went the exact opposite route. We started with the history first and built up from there. So if you wanted to run a historically accurate game from any point in time and then where you're riding on the Oregon Trail and you're more afraid to die of dysentery than anything else, you die of dysentery. But you get the full actual history of that journey and all the different people, all the different groups that were there whose stories have either been stolen, erased, and I wanted to give voice to those people that have lost their voice. And on top of that, then we add in the layer of the weird. And the Weird West is this massive genre that is super encompassing. It's just not vampires or werewolves. It is aliens. It is extra-dimensional beings. It is everything, and it's magnificent. And for that, then we also added in some different things from folklore, and we made some of our own up. And on top of that, if people want it, I've included an alternate timeline where Lincoln and Johnson are both killed, and then it sort of spirals off to the possible repercussions that may occur. And in the core book, I've included the first 5 years of that for folks to get their beaks wet so they can see how they like it. And on top of that, we've included a meta plot for people that want one about a secret organization and some ancient beings that they're sort of battling against. And you can play one of those, 2 of those, all of those, however you want for your game. And that's just the setting material.
That's really, I was not aware that it contained a, what do you say, mundane is perhaps the wrong word, but a historically accurate setting in addition to the, the supernatural elements, the aliens, whatever. And I kind of like that. That's something that I've thought about wanting to play in at times, because at some point it's like, okay, we play in so many games that have so many fantastical elements. Sometimes it might be fun to play in one that doesn't. And that time period has been so romanticized in a lot of what you've seen, to actually take and go back and do it from a historically accurate lens, I think would be both informative and enjoyable.
It is both of those, and it was incredibly daunting, fraught with terror. I had a massive team. I pulled people from multiple different backgrounds because it's just not on me to try to tell the story of America from all the different marginalized groups that were here. I wanted to let as many voices as possible tell these stories. We brought in numerous sensitivity readers, proofreaders. I would say the book itself took maybe a year and a half, and then we took another 9 months or so just to try to go back and make sure that it was culturally sensitive, that we weren't doing anything that would hopefully not trigger anyone else. We provided a content warning for the book, but we did not glamorize the American myth. We brought it to reality, and we showed you some of the atrocities, the victories, that multiple people did atrocities, just not one group of people, though largely it was white Europeans that committed more of the atrocities. And all of that is highlighted in the book and the history. And on top of that massive, I want to say, over 40,000 words history section alone, we have a different section dedicated to the different folks that sort of made up the entire Americas, with the indigenous nations, immigrants, everyone else is its own separate chapter. We have another chapter dedicated just to locations. So we give you the history on lots of different little places. So you're not just stuck, say, running a game only in New Mexico. You have the entire, what is considered America really to run, because we include New York, we include like San Francisco, we include stuff in the middle, up top, all around. So you've got that entire period and place and people to play and engage with.
What is the page count for this core book, just out of curiosity?
So it is, with covers and everything else, it's 806 pages.
Okay, I was going to say that has to be quite the volume to have all that information in it.
Because we do not skimp on artwork, because artwork is also just as important as the words and history we're providing. And we try to write in a manner that's engaging, because we don't want to bore you with history. I want you to read history and love it the way that I do, and see all this amazing diversity that was there that people are trying to tell you that's not there. I built the book like this because I want other creatives out there to read it and go, I have a source that I can reference to start making my own book in any of these different time periods. And Chris and his gang have given us all these great hooks to work from.
Cool. No, I it's been on the list of things. I honestly didn't become aware of it until after the Kickstarter had closed, and I'm gonna have to definitely try and get my local guy to get me a copy of this when the hardbacks and whatnot come out.
And so, on top of all of that, sorry, just excited about
it. Yeah, keep going.
No, I'm done. You can go. I can wait a minute.
No, I was just gonna say, I know if I have things correctly, the digital versions have been released to the public currently, but the print editions are still somewhere between printer and Kickstarter backers, and will then eventually be released to the public, correct?
Sorta. So all the digital versions of everything has been released. You can get the core book, the Balladeer screen. For us, the Balladeer is our game moderator.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole other story that's really entertaining for later. We've released 4 or 5 digital scenarios, a pack of pre-generated characters, because the game itself uses the life path system, or for us, I think we call them milestones, to build your characters. So when you build your character in Haunted West, we start from your birth all the way up until really whenever you get done rolling on the life path. So you could be that 19 all the way up to, if you really wanted to keep rolling, maybe 80, and then hit the trail.
Wow.
But during that, you may have encountered the weird. You start with allies, enemies, people that like you, people that hate you, favors you may owe folks. But you've got an actual solid spine, and you're a living, breathing member of whatever world you and your Balladeer are shaping.
Very nice. Now, is that somewhat akin to the life path system that, I don't know if he was the first one to do it, but the life path system that Pondsmith put into Cyberpunk in, I don't know if it was in 2013, but I know it was in 2020.
Maybe.
Fair.
Some people have compared it to that. Some people have compared it to Traveler. I just know that I wanted it and how I wanted it to look. And so I sort of told the vision to the team. And the team, got it, boss. And they went out and they made some amazing stuff. And as any other creative, I was like, that is brilliant. But have you thought about, and then it went from there.
Hey, that's the whole creative process, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, that's the thing, like, right, let's go on a little bit of a tangent here, but that's the thing where, like, game design has come so far in, call it the 40 years that 45 years that games have been really being written. But, it's also a thing where everyone builds on the work that have come before them, and you learn lessons from it, and you go, this was cool and this wasn't, and I want it to look like this. And you have examples to work off of. And yeah, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but it was in my head. So you have a very robust life path system, which sounds incredibly wonderful and fun to make characters with.
It's one of the things that we stress in the book is how vital a session 0 is. Because a session 0 sort of lets the group sort of form all their own stories. Because there is also one of the final milestones is sort of the group milestone. So it's this thing that sort of cements you all together. And it's the reason why, regardless of a bounty on your head, this person next to you that's got your back will not sort of sell you out to the sheriff 80% of the time. So that's an important story element that has to be part of it too.
Yeah, because that was, I mean, well, as the old saying goes, everyone has their price. So once you've got your life path, where do you go next?
So the life path is broken down into, you have your initial life path, then you choose your paragon. So a paragon, I guess, would be equated to almost a class. We've got gunfighters, academics, practitioners, resolute. So there's 12 different paragons. And each of those paragons sort of has key skills, and they give you a bonus to certain skills. And then they each have their own individualized milestones that you'll roll on those also. So, for instance, you may start sort of the same general initial childhood path together, which some of the milestones will, one of the key elements of the game itself, sorry to take a step back, is your origins are also random. So, for instance, you're rolling, you may roll that you're an immigrant, you may roll that you're a black person, you may roll that you're sort of anyone. And all of that is one of the milestones. Because I wanted to go back and reinforce part of the thing that anyone can play anyone if done respectfully and with the proper education. And you will likely fail. But when you fail, you try to apologize for anyone that you may hurt, and you try again. Because I staunchly believe that gaming teaches us empathy and how to better understand each other. And part of that is people having to sort of take that initial step to try it and build an actual community. Even the game itself, it stresses that all the movies, everything you see talk about this one exceptional person doing something. That's not really true. There's a community behind that person that gave them this opportunity to do whatever this exceptional thing is. And for instance, we have a grip mechanic. Sort of you have a modular point, sort of a point that you can spin to let you do things. You may get a bonus on a skill roll. You can do other things. One of the things that I added in the game is if you spin it for yourself, you get a plus 10% to your own skill roll. But if you spin it for someone else, they get a plus 20% to their skill. Sort of reinforcing this concept of community.
Okay. I don't know that I've seen that in a design before. I like that though.
Yeah, I'll just pipe in and say that I really like that because it encourages your players to work with each other, which I think in some systems, I don't know, in some systems it can really feel like you're just isolated. It's like, oh, well, me and my friends, but I do my own thing and they do their own thing and we do our own things together sometimes. But it's nice to have a system that encourages, no, help help the people in your group, do things that are beneficial for the group and not just beneficial for yourself. And I really like that, and especially in a game like you're saying that has a really extensive life path, and to use that and to encourage how other people affect that life. I think that's cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying too about the, respectfully playing not your own background. Because I think that's, I know for myself that's something that maybe I shy away from because I don't want to screw it up, and then like you were saying before, to a certain point ignoring it makes it stronger, and that's not at all what I want to do, but I guess sometimes you just have to bite it off and chew it even if it's a little tough.
I think so, but that's just my guiding principle.
You know what? It's a thing where I think that it's not always fun, but I agree with you though that I think games can be a powerful tool for, well, building community, because let's face it, what is a gaming table other than a micro community? And you can learn things and take them away. you know, and I know in discussions we've had on the podcast, I've learned a lot about myself as far as why do I like certain things just through various discussions that we've had, and there's a lot more to games than just having fun, and I think it's a good thing to embrace that.
I think the other part of it, though, is you can make that experience and learning fun, which is part of what I've tried to do, especially in Haunted West, because I'm asking people to take a larger step out there. And I'm just not asking one or two people. I'm asking the entire table for when you roll characters, because you don't necessarily know. You can come with an idea for your character. And when you're rolling on the tables, that idea may shift and change because these are sort of touchstones for you to help build and sort of reorganize your character with. So it doesn't take or destroy your idea. It helps enhance your idea and makes it more of a part of the world, because it was so diverse at the time. It is astounding that people don't know it. I had a couple writers in the book didn't know 30% of all of the drovers or cowboys and cowgirls were black. They didn't know that. They'd never been taught it. It never occurred to them, and they found out working on the book. And I had some people had one writer who was so didn't really get on board with what we're doing that they just had to drop out of the project because they didn't think it would be possible to tell an inclusive, accurate history of the time period. I knew this was like after they were way behind on deadlines and everything else.
I wonder if, and not to go into a majorly deeper topic, but I wonder if some of that ignorance comes from the media that's been produced around the time frame. You know, if you think back to the old John Wayne movies, that wasn't something that was represented, even though I completely agree with you. In the history, it's there. It's just a fact. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in the media and the way it was represented later, that's not something that was represented. And I wonder if that's why people sort of have that blind side to it, because, you know, it's just not. And I really hearing that and hearing what you're saying about this, man. I bought Harlem Unbound because I thought that was like awesome. I am literally on and buying Weird West right now. Like, or I'm sorry, not. I'm literally buying the game right now, like as we speak, because you've sold me. That is absolutely up my alley. And like I said, the thing I appreciate and the thing that I'm hearing you talk about, and you have an appreciation for history and a love for history that really shows and comes through in what you're talking about. And it shows in the writing. I mean, honestly, it does. And that's what I love about your books and your content that you put out, is because you have this passion for the history, and that's awesome. And yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, even, you know, I've spent a little, you know, I haven't done a ton of research, but yeah, even some of the, what do you want to say, more documentary based media I've seen on the West, aside from Bass Reeves, has really just sort of glossed over any sort of underrepresented individuals pretty much completely.
I want you to keep that in mind. And when you look at the historical folks chapter, because we also have a history chapter just about actual people at the time, think about how difficult it was to find those people and information on them, much less finding images of some of them, which was nigh impossible. Like sitting on my hard drive, I've got maybe another 15,000 words of historical folks that I haven't included, that I may include in a future book, because there are so many amazing people that no one has ever heard of.
You must have had to really done massive amounts of digging to find this information then.
I would say for Harlem Unbound, there was a lot of online stuff I did, and I always buy books. So I like physical books. It helped in the wee hours after reading something for hours and hours. It makes me feel better to like fill the book and then reading on the screen. I would say for Harlem Unbound, I bought maybe 20 books. That's not counting digital. This is like physical books that were mailed to my house that I sitting on my shelf. For Haunted West, I think I picked up over 100 books.
Wow.
And I think I've managed to give away, because so much bookshelf, 20 of those. I want them to have new homes. I want other people to see the history.
That's really, I mean, I was not aware, you know, I was aware that in making the game you had been careful to make it historically accurate. I was not at all aware that you had dove this deep and really put this much work into it. And like Steve said, that is just awesome. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be picking this up once at some point we can find out and talk about availability and so forth, because this is something I definitely want.
Hey Steve, I'll make a deal with you. I'll order it digital, and you let me know when Phil can get it in physical, and I'll order it physical as well. Just tell him to order 2.
Oh, all right. So you keep asking about the physical. So you may have noticed the world is still a little bit of a crisis right now, and printers are having somewhat of a paper shortage. But we managed to get in under that. So with luck, this is a big spoiler. We should have. I'm saying this tentatively, and I'm putting a lot more sort of like caveats on it left and right. So if you look for a tag, note this has 18 potentialities around it. We should have the book next month.
Awesome.
And I want to ship it out as soon as I get it, but it'll be based on holidays because it wouldn't do any good if we get the book, say, late December or mid-December to try to ship it out in the big influx with UPS and FedEx, how they are currently, much less when they're in a crunch period.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of one of the project management aspects of owning your own company that you also have to do with the game design and everything else, is trying to figure out how to make sure you can have proper customer service, but at an economic cost point also. So there's somewhere of a profit in there. I know people hate to hear people talk about profits, but I love the art. I love making the books, but I need to make money to be able to make the next book. I love that art to be able to give someone something else.
But you also have to make enough money to be able to stay, living and not have to go do other things that would take away from your time to do these books, you know?
Oh, I have a full-time real job.
Oh, you do? Holy crap.
I've got a family. I've got an 8-year-old who's currently hanging out in the living room on her iPad right now while I'm doing this. And in my free time, my fun time, this is what I do.
Well, all I'm going to say is that's impressive because, I mean, I know the not few biggest companies in the gaming industry. Most of the rest are done by people who do it on the side and part-time, but to turn out something with this much content, this much research behind it, while you're still holding down a full-time job is impressive.
Thank you. I don't know if I would have chosen your word. I think I would have chosen a word that questions my life choices sometimes, but I like yours better.
Well, you can describe yourself however you like, but let's put it this way. I wish I could get that much done around my full-time job. So, all right. So, I mean, I'm sure you could go on about more about your setting and so forth. Do you want to do mechanics? Because
it's your show. I am just a guest and happy to be here. I may be drinking a beer right now and just chilling. So you let me know what you want, and that's the direction we'll go.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm sold on your setting material. I don't need to hear more to really, really want this book badly. And I am one of those people who I will try pretty much any game system at least once. And if I like it, I'll try and find other ways to use it. But I've heard one of the interesting things on Haunted West was that you actually have like a easy mode, an intermediate mode, and I don't know if crunchy is the right word, but a crunchy mode as well.
Okay, so in the book, you could technically say there are 4 game systems. Why? Because I gave you a lot of tools to run the game, sort of like from a narrative story point. I want to give you a lot of tools to be able to run the game from a mechanical standpoint. And some groups like doing things really crunchy. Some groups like almost a more narrative style. The 4th one, though, is sort of a hack for the game, and a powered by the apocalypse hack. Because the more I was reading, a lot of people loved Harlem Unbound, but they didn't want to use Trail, they didn't want to use Chaosium, they wanted to use Powered by the Apocalypse and run their games. I was like, all right, when I make Haunted West, I will potentially include a hack just so I can give people something to, like, out the door play the game. And they hit that stretch goal, and I was like, great. Now I get to hire another creative to write a Powered by the Apocalypse hack. Because I've played it and I like it, but I am not the person to write it. Because I like crunchier rules. And so a lot of the rest of the system itself is based more on the initial concept I had for the Obor system, which is going to be Darker Hue's house system. I wanted something that was going to be modular and somewhat granular that I could do different things with, because I'm going to use it for multiple different genres over the years for whatever new game I put out. And part of that then became, what is a solid, easy to learn mechanic that people engage with? And I've been using a variant of what's in the book now in my own home games for decades. It's a simple, like, sort of the D100 roll under. Super easy. It's almost intuitive to understand. If I say that you have a 60% in short arms, you can roll 2 percentile dice, and if you hit 60 or under, I am successful. If I roll above, my shot went wild. And where we start getting into more crunch, like that is the one core that goes throughout the 3 tiers. And the 3 tiers are the Badlands, Quick Draw, and Dead Man's Hand. Badlands is a more miniature combat version of the game, where we have something called stamina points, and we have sort of an action chart. You can say how many points you want to spend and what actions you can take, and you can move around on the map with that. And skill rolls are the same. It uses slightly different damage rolls. The next one is Quick Draw, which is almost more narrative focused. It's like you're at a card table and you keep sort of pushing your luck and you're sort of betting and hoping no one calls you. You can keep doing these amazing feats and amazing things until finally the balladeer says, all right, it didn't go down like that. Make me a call. And then you roll. And if you're successful, you get to keep building that story. If you fail, the balladeer gets to add in some complications and your story keeps going and progressing. One of the important things was like the story doesn't end, it keeps moving and morphing. This can always morph in your benefit. And lastly is Dead Man's Hand. It's a more, we'll say, traditional style of play, and it's where most of the widgets are. We definitely use sort of a jacks mechanic. So you roll percentile dice, and if you make your skill, you're successful. But for every 10 degrees under, you earn something called a jack, which is sort of a meta currency. It can do more damage if you're attacking someone, and or little narrative things, or you can flow it down your river that lets you hold onto that jack, and you can spend it later in the game on some other skill. You can automatically succeed on that skill, or you can add a bonus to that skill roll later.
I like that idea. I love those kind of little meta currencies in games, because they and I think they encourage the players to participate in the narrative so much more.
That and all the playtesting that kept coming through. And so for the Dead Man's Hand, we also have chase rolls, be it horse, jetpack, gray saucer, and that's where you find all sort of like the crunch rolls are in the Dead Man's Hand section. And they're built so that you could apply the ones you want to use, or you don't have to use them. And that was really important for me when I was building everything. And the last part is that we have the dueling mechanic, which you can have gunfighter duels or sort of social duels, because it was just important to be able to use your words as effectively as your shooting iron back then. So you can talk people down to big, massive arguments, and they use sort of the same mechanics, but with a different flow to them.
Cool. You're not helping my wallet with any of this talk, Chris.
That is my objective.
Oh, wow. No, this sounds, I was interested before, and it has only grown. So, all right. Yes, I'm definitely going to be buying this. So what other cool bits do you have hidden in here? Because you got 800 pages and it sounds like you have 1,000 pages worth of history. You've got 4 game systems, and I don't even know.
So the other thing is we have peculiarities, which are sort of advantages and disadvantages for your character. Sort of you can sort of like help shape your character a little bit more. One of my personal favorites that's in the book is a partner in every saloon, which basically means anytime you go into a saloon, you might roll a d10, and there's like, I think, a 10% chance you know someone in the saloon. And then there's another random roll that determines your relationship with that person. It ranges from something comical to like a hated vengeance to like a scorned past relationship. Help add in a little extra flavor. It doesn't always happen. It's sort of a smaller percentage chance, but you can buy it a couple times and increase the percentage. But every new saloon you go into in a scenario, there's a chance you know someone.
That sounds like a lot of fun too. A whole lot of fun.
And then we have something called propensities, which propensities are sort of what paragons are named NPCs have. They're like hyper skills that can eventually become mythic. The gunfighter might be able to shoot a little bit straighter. He may be able to hit targets better, up until eventually a drover may be able to like throw their lariat around enough and whip up a tornado and ride that tornado.
That's too cool. That is entirely too cool.
I didn't even mention the magics that are in the book. So there's a lot of goodness in the book.
I just appreciate that you've managed to make this much cool stuff, but also have the historical groundedness in it. Because I know from the assorted things in my collection, I don't know of any of them that go that far in both directions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was not easy. And I had an amazing team that in many late night calls saying, are you sure? Like, yes, we can do it. And some people that came up with some incredible ideas that are in the book. One of my favorite things is sort of an extension. Is a Clockwork Kingdom that Evan did that is hidden away under Texas as another location that you can go to, which is super, super cool. And Dennis wrote most of the sort of hidden science section, which is the meta campaign that deals with an ancient alien race and the ramifications that sort of run throughout to modern day. And Kurt created an amazing piece of body horror to represent one of their agents, which is and Angel wrote the State of Sequoia in the book, which, so in the Haunted West reconstruction is the alternate timeline. And one of the things that happens is through different negotiations, the indigenous nations sort of make an agreement with the United States and they form Sequoia, which is sort of its own state that has representatives and everything else that go to DC. And Angel wrote that up, and it is also spectacular. So I guess really, once you've read it, I could talk about specific bullet points in the book, but there's a lot. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but I feel like I've given a lot of spoilers. More tonight than I have any other time.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, but to be honest, to me, it's like you've been dropping these kernels, and I keep going, oh, that one, and oh, that one, and that one, and I want all of them. So yes,
you mentioned Ken. Ken is also one of the writers in the book. He wrote the scenario Knight of the Aerostat.
Cool. So since you're kind of starting into that, do you want to shout out parts or all of your team? I mean, you said you had quite a vast team, so I don't know if you want...
It would take a long time to read through them all, but each and every one of them is exceptional. Some quick ones. I apologize, and I won't say everyone. Rachel did editing. Natasha did the layout. Angel was a writer and one of the sensitivity readers. Dan was a sensitivity reader. Rose helped with. Rose is sort of like the key driving force behind the bad lines section, which is awesome. Adam jumped on board and did some additional dev work because while I have a day job, I also needed some additional help so I could sort of focus on some day job stuff. And Adam stepped in and became like my right-hand man for most of that. And there's like 15 other people I could shout out. So buy the book, see their names, buy, and give them money.
Yeah, because, well, like you said, everybody puts a lot of time into these things. And, I mean, you put together, not having seen it yet, what sounds like just an absolutely amazing product. And, yeah, it costs money to do that, people. That's the truth of it. So, Steve, do you have anything more?
Guess
No, go ahead.
I was just going to tell you a horror story, but no.
We'll take horror stories.
That I will save that for whenever we're at a convention when people can go to them again and drinks.
Alrighty.
No, I don't have anything else. You've sold this book to me twice now, so congratulations. But yeah, I think, why don't you go ahead and if you have any social media or where you'd like to be, anything you'd like to plug as far as your personal stuff, Chris, and any of that.
You can find me on Twitter at darker_hue. I rant about occasional gaming stuff. I talk a lot about the work. I retweet a lot of other great, amazing people making good stuff. And I would say buy Haunted West. Tell your friends about Haunted West. Tell journalists that you meet about Haunted West. Tell people in the street that you meet about Haunted West. Make Haunted West cards and give them out to people that you don't even know. And that's it.
You need to make stickers, Chris, so people will just stick them in random places.
If they want, I recently opened a swag store, and we sell stickers now.
There you go.
Well, yeah, with that, I think it's time we move into Game of the Week.
Woohoo! Game of the Week!
Game of the Week! Game of the Week!
All right. So, would you like one of us at least to go and so you get a little bit better of a feel of what we do here, Chris?
I'll just dive in. I'm okay with that. What's a little bit of internet embarrassment?
All right.
So I guess my game is going to be Hella's by Jared Grayson. It's called Hella's Worlds of Sun and Stone. It is sort of a scientific space opera game that takes the hellenistic humans and puts them with aliens in a far future. And there's gods, there's magic, and it's all side by side with like advanced lasers and all this sort of super technology. Jerry is incredible creative, and anything he makes, people should just buy.
Very cool. This has got the Greek font and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I found the right one.
It's also steeped somewhat in history. It's got space opera stuff. So I love science fiction and I love history. So what's not to love?
Very, very cool. All right, Steve, you got something?
I do. Mine's a little bit odd for Game of the Week. I'll just say that. The game I'm shouting out is the Index Card RPG.
Okay.
So, you know me, I normally shout out like genre-specific games that have a setting attached to them. I'm not usually the guy that's like, oh yeah, here's this generic game system. It's great. But I've been playing some Index Card RPG, and it's great. Like, it is one of the coolest generic systems I've played with in a while, because it has all of the information you need in like an index card. And to play that is fantastic. To run it, I've been doing a little bit of research into running it, and I'm just like astounded by I don't know how to put it. I'm astounded by the work that went into making this as simple as it is, if that makes any sense. Because it's complex, but it's not too complex. And it's simple, but it doesn't leave you feeling wanting. You don't walk away from playing a session of it going, yeah, I feel like that was like just like made up 90% of the time. No, it's great. Like, it's really good. Yeah, that's my game of the week, is the Index Card RPG.
That's cool. Yeah, I knew you'd been playing that. Actually, that's with one of the people from our Discord, right?
Yeah. I hopped on that and we've been playing, and yeah, as I get into actually playing it, it just gets like, I didn't know going into it, I was like, okay, well, sure, I'll check it out because I'll play anything once. I like crunchier games. I don't like super crunchy games, but I like crunchier games. But I was like, okay, well, I'll try this. Index Card RPG is great, man. It's dope. Like, what do you got, Steve?
Well, I've been on a serious games kick lately, so I decided to kind of slightly veer off of that. So my game of the week this week is going to be RetroStar. Now, if you've not heard of this, let me read you just the first, well, let's call it 2 lines of the drive-through listing. It starts off with a dictionary-style definition of science fiction. It says fiction dealing principally with the impact of actual or imagined science on society or individuals, or having a scientific factor as an essential orienting component. Now add disco. This is RetroStar. And what this game is explicitly made to do is 70s style, 60s, 70s style sci-fi.
Yeah. No, I hate you that you found this. I hate it. I love it. I saw the cover art and my brain immediately went to like a million different terrible movies I've watched.
And like, it just looks like, I don't know that I'd want to play it all the time.
Oh no.
But
I want to play this. I want to play this like once a month on like a Saturday night at 2:00 in the morning. I want this to be the game that like I can't sleep, and I know a bunch of my friends can't sleep, and so I'm all gonna call them up and be like, we're gonna play RetroStar.
But yeah,
if you make that happen, much like I said, I've been up since midnight, so feel free to give me a call and I'd be jumping that.
But yeah, I mean, like, and to the point, they actually call the GM the showrunner, and a campaign is a series.
Oh man, so they're going, they're less going for the movies. They're more going for like Battlestar Galactica.
That was specifically referenced somewhere. I saw. I don't see it on the listing, but I saw that somewhere. I actually saw this quite a while ago in some little blurb on like EN World or something. But yeah, it just like it looks like just absolute bonkers fun, and it's actually been around for since December of 2015. It's from Spectrum Games, but the core book PDF is all of $15.
And there's a pay what you want quick play.
Yes.
Now, if you want to try it before you buy it, you can do that too.
Yep.
That's cool, man.
I knew that would hit your dials.
Yeah, you did it.
So Yeah, I guess then that kind of brings us to the end of the show. I would like to thank you very much, Chris, for coming to take time to talk with us and for bringing up some topics that aren't the easiest to talk about, but do need addressed. And to a certain point, thank you for calling us out on some of that because, well, frankly, we deserved it.
Appreciate you all having me on the show.
Absolutely. It was a blast. And, again, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. With all that being said,
Actually, I have one more question.
oh, go ahead.
Do you have something in the works that you would like to hint, or are you not willing to do that yet?
So one of the things I learned when making Haunted West, I talked about Haunted West before, like early on, because I thought that maybe like talk about it and get everyone to talk about it, engage with it. It didn't quite work like that. So I've taken a brand new approach for Project X. It is only called Project X. I will give no hints to what it is. I will not say what it is until Project X is ready to drop.
Very cool. So there
Fair
you have
enough.
it. Chris's next game is Project X. All right.
Or if you look for it on Twitter, it is always called Redacted.
Yeah. We can only speculate that this is an X-Men RPG that he is working on.
Do you like superheroes?
Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt you there, Steve.
No, that's fine. But with that, and again, we want to thank you for coming on the podcast. We want to remind everyone, as always, links to everything in the show notes, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Chris's information, as he provides to you guys. All the games we've mentioned, everything will be in the show notes. But with that, we want to remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast. On Discord at Me and Steve RPGs. And as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.